I got to move it on. Go ahead, read this.
Sorry about that.
Zhang King Miao, Zhang, I don't know how to say that. His wife played a leading role in enforcing purges during the Cultural Revolution. She is directly tied to an estimate 100,000 to 1 million deaths. She was arrested and convicted for this.
But do you see how you refer to her as that guy's wife? You don't refer to her as who she actually is. She is under her husband's probable control. I mean, I can't prove it because I don't know her and she's not alive today to say that. But you literally referred to her as this guy's wife, not this woman.
Because
it was his wife. It was not her.
Who is her husband?
No.
Her husband is Chairman Mao, the founding father.
Chairman Mao.
Yeah, People's Republic of China. Of course, if you simply bring up her name, nobody would know like who the heck this is. So just to clarify, they have to emphasize, okay, this is someone's wife.
But you don't think Chairman Mao's wife was at all manipulated by Chairman Mao to do things? You think she was completely in control of her own decisions?
Wait, hold on. What if she was... The fuck?
You scared me.
What?
When I'm asking her, though.
What's your question again?
You don't
Brian's
think Chairman Mao's wife was... You think she was completely in control of her own decisions the whole time?
I wasn't living in that age, so I'm not clearly sure about what happened in the history, but unless you have some sort of evidence to show me that she was manipulated by the husband.
Yeah, if you're making the claim, you're going to have to provide evidence that he was manipulating her. What if it's actually the case that she was like a more fervent ideological supporter of communism? Maybe she was more of a hardcore communist than he was.
Yeah, quote unquote, maybe. But if you look at what happened in history, it wasn't like she was on the name of all the history books. It was him. He did all the things. And if she did part of it, you'd have to assume that he had a play in that. Because at the time, even still, people there, men have more power. Even political power. It's not fair to you to say, well, maybe she was pulling the strings. You don't know. It's like, okay, but if you look at what was happening, he was pulling the strings.
You don't know if she was being manipulated.
Exactly.
Yeah, in a world where war is profitable, people that's what the society will want to push for, you know. That's what the society's pushing for.
Please speak into the microphones. All right, read this.
Chair 1. Women couldn't find work in the 1920s. Common female occupations included factory work, domestic service, teaching, nursing, and
clerical work.
Clerical work. Never seen that word before. Like typing, bookkeeping, BBC.
What does that stand for?
Thank you.
There wasn't like a law.
Or whatever.
There was not a law on the books saying women couldn't work.
I know that.
Okay.
However, if you look at what was going on, it was not common for women to work. It was actually discouraged. You were seen as less than if you had a job such as that, because your entire job was supposed to be marrying a man and having children.
Do you think that women wanted to work back then, or did they want to build families?
They were taught to want to build families.
Is that a bad thing?
I mean, in the grand scope of what's happening in the world, then yeah. Everyone should have been taught to be equal. Men should take care of the family as much as women, and women should work, and so should men. Everyone should work. Women should have time off for giving birth and pushing a whole human out of them, for sure. But it shouldn't be a normalized thing that women shouldn't have to work at all, and men should only have to work, because if you enforce that, then companies only want to hire men and not women. And then women who don't have husbands are seen as less than a woman who has a husband or a man attached to her. And that just reinforces the entire idea of the patriarchy. Of course, women were able to work. They were seen as less than, they were paid less than, and they were like just discriminated against if they tried to work.
They were paid less because it wasn't as hard of a job as the men did.
Because they weren't allowed to have as hard of jobs.
Listen, if you...
No, wait, hold on. Women literally couldn't do the jobs.
Yeah. They could, but they were not as allowed as.
Hold on. Hold on. Do you think women have the same physical strength as men?
Right.
They could.
Yeah.
No,
No.
honey,
No.
No.
Yeah,
No,
but
it's physically known that
Here,
men
tilt,
But-
tilt
yeah,
your mic down.
yeah,
Tilt
but
your mic down.
into-
Tilt your mic down, please. Tilt your mic down.
But in today's world, strength doesn't even matter. We have machines.
But your claim was about historical work
Okay.
where physical strength...
Coal mining, women can do that. Building, women can do
Women,
that.
hold on, no. Women don't have the requisite general strength to do a lot of these professions.
If you just
If it was true, if men and women's physical strength was equal, then they would be in these positions.
Women have to work harder to gain more muscle. That is true. It's easier for men to gain muscle and be stronger. However,
Okay, go ahead.
in the coal mines, in the buildings, in whatever, women can still have jobs there. Not everything is based off of physical strength.
Are machines not taking over men and women's
Well,
jobs?
we're talking about before
You're talking
machines, right?
You're talking historically,
But we're-
and a lot
exactly.
of this machinery still today that makes physical labor easier still requires a degree of physical strength to operate.
But you think
like a
women
jackhammer,
can't have
like
physical strength?
instead of swinging a pickaxe to like break up stones, we have like jackhammers, but that it requires physical strength to hold the jackhammer, to keep it steady, etc.
And are you saying women are incapable of having physical strength?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that generally speaking, and I'm assuming you're going to agree with me on this, generally speaking, men are stronger than women, descriptively.
In science, men are able to gain more muscle mass than women.
They're just naturally stronger than women.
However, if a woman puts her mind to it and tries very hard, she could still have a job similar to a man's.
And
If
how
she-
many
Could withstand more pain.
Why is transgender athletes such a controversy now if you think men and women have equal physical strength?
Well, I don't think transgender should be in a women's sport at all.
Yeah, that's
Depends
definitely
on
everyone's
where they
opinion. But the
transition.
reason why it's such a controversial topic is because these transgender women, they still have more physical strength because they were born as men. So
She was right. It's depending on when they decided to transition. If they transitioned at a certain time, they never developed those men aspects, and they always develop only women aspects.
I mean,
I know a lot of trans women.
If a
and
man
when they
starts
started-
transitioning at 11,
He never
they don't
developed from
have the male physical strength that gives them an advantage in some sort of a sport.
I mean, I would probably dispute this because my position on this is that the sole difference between men and women is not exclusively relegated to the endocrine system. So what you're talking about is if they're taking puberty blockers.
Okay.
But like there's skeletal differences, there's other differences like lung capacity, for example. So again, even if they do transition at a younger age, yes, that will have some impact on the musculoskeletal system, but there are still going to be certain differences between like a
Trans women are more women and more feminine than any woman in this room. Like they take their womanisms very seriously. They take
womanisms. What is
they
that?
take being like a feminine like a fucking job. Most women don't even care about like looking as
So
feminine.
are you gonna argue that trans women are more women, like they're better women than women? So you're saying men are better women than men?
Yeah, because they know exactly what
You're
a man
gonna have
wants.
to wrap your head around that one. So are men better women than women?
My sister is more manlier than my trans friend. My trans friend is more feminine, more ladylike, more in her feminine aspect of her life
But I
than
don't think-
any like.
a transgender is not more feminine and more
also-
woman than I am.
we are talking about physical strength here. Physical appearance, like how nice your skin is, doesn't have to do anything with how you can excel in a sport.
Yeah, my
not
trans
relevant.
friend would never even try to join a sport because she never like wanted to compete like
I
that.
believe Brian was talking about the muscle mass and the lung capacity.
And I know a large percentage of American men who only play video games can barely do a sit-up, let alone a pull-up. And they're
Okay,
tech
hold
people.
on.
Can you
Look,
do a sit-up or a
I
pull-up?
don't know what we're talking
Yes, I can. I
I
was
know.
a gymnast for
It's
most
all
of my
over.
life.
I don't know
I'm
what
a
we're
burlesque
talking
dancer.
about
I do
right
aerial
now.
I think we're just going on
we
some
gotta
tangents.
stop. Here's what we have to do though. We can't like always go to the exception. I'm gonna sit here and agree with you. There are definitely individual women who are way stronger than men who could beat up men. But what I'm talking about is if we're just talking about generalities, the majority of men are stronger than the majority of women.
Yeah.
It's biology.
So yes, is there like are there women out there who are stronger?
If you
There's
pull
women
12
who there's women who are
students
stronger than me.
off the street and asked them to do a fitness test. Do I think that women might perform better than men currently? Possibly. As in, if you pull 12 random people, 6 men, 6 women, and ask them to do a fitness test, I've met a lot of out-of-shape men recently. So I'm saying I think women take care of themselves in their youth because they know that they're supposed to be attractive for men.
Boy.
And there's a lot of men that have gone into very lazy professions where physical work isn't part of what they do.
Somebody over here wanted to weigh in, or?
I just wanted to say something quickly. I think that Brian is pointing at, this side is pointing at exceptions to the rule. But in general, let's say the coal mines today, not time before. If we have today the coal mines, like back then, and we have,
Today or back then?
Let's say today. Let's say today because I'm not going to talk about...
So the coal mines in 2025.
Yes, no, I'm not talking about like values. I'm talking about strength.
Okay.
Let's say today you put a man, a 30-year-old man and a 30-year-old woman, healthy, without exceptions, 100% healthy, to go work at the coal mines. Let's see how many buckets of coal the men can bring out in 2 hours and how many buckets of coal can the woman bring.
Depends if they were taught how to work the machine.
No, that's what I'm saying. From zero, they just learn, healthy. The man is going to do more because it's biologically proven, scientifically proven. If I am the owner of that mine, I'm going to pay more than man because he brings 30 buckets and the woman brings 25 maybe. And I think that's the difference. It's not because the man is better. It's scientifically, biologically, it is what it is, so he's going to get paid better. Now, as a work as a woman, nothing comes to my mind that a woman is better doing it. I don't know, I have to think about it. Maybe the woman is getting paid better. But I don't see that as being underestimated. It's who gives more, who works better.
I think we're talking about the third variable. As I minored in sociology, you need 3 variables to be able to judge someone. So you can't just judge someone on man, woman, and their job. You need a third variable.
What's the third variable?
Like race, class, and gender. You can't just judge someone off race and class.
Wait.
You need 3 variables to draw a conclusion. Minimum.
But hold on, why would you need? Okay, if the question
as
is
in stereotypes in America.
But stereotype. If the question is who is physically stronger on average, men or women, what would the third variable like? What's the third variable needed to determine that?
Do they not work out?
So let's say
an obese man versus a fit man.
Let's say that a man and a woman are twins. They're born at the same time. They work out. They have the same eating schedule, same workout schedule. The man is going to get stronger than the woman. That is true because of biology.
She's correct.
However, does that mean that a woman is less than the man? No.
That's not what we're talking about, though.
Okay. In the coal mines, that might have mattered. We moved past that.
But the argument here is okay. So if it is the case, hold on. God damn, let me finish, please. Stop interrupting. If it is the case that historically the majority of available jobs were physical in nature,
that's not true.
Anymore.
Really?
Doctors.
How many doctors are there?
Shoemakers, clothing makers.
I would argue that even like a shoemaker requires like muscular strength in the arms and dexterity and.
No, but back then.
I'm not an expert in like what is the called when you're there's a specific term when you're a shoemaker like a what's it called? Cobbler. Like there's probably some level of physicality even involved in that. In any case, if it is the case that the majority of jobs historically did require some degree of physical strength, this would seem to, and if it's also the case that men are just generally physically stronger than women, is it any surprise that men were more likely to occupy these positions?
It was purely because of the way society was set up. Because if women were taught to grow strong from a young age and fight to work jobs, they could have easily worked those jobs. And I get that men are stronger physically. However, if a woman really tried, she could get as strong as a man in that capacity.
You sure?
Yeah, I'm positive.
So wait, let me ask you this then. If we were to look at the strongest, so the strongest man and the strongest woman to have ever existed.
Right.
Or how about alive today? you would say that their strength is equal.
I mean, I don't know the strongest man or the strongest woman, so I'm not sure.
Subjective.
However,
It's objective. It's literally objective.
However,
here's 500 pounds. Can you lift it? Go ahead.
However, in the olden days, what we're talking about.
Tell me the olden days, yeah.
There's no gyms. There's just work. There's just birth and work.
I agree.
If a woman was taught to plow fields with her brother and do all that shit with her brother, the same time, same exact teaching styles, she could do the same thing.
So what do you do when you're plowing a
not,
field?
I don't know. I've never plowed a field.
Are you lifting things with your upper body
I've
strength?
never plowed a field.
You should plow a field.
Stonework, hobbling
you lift a
work.
tractor.
No, I don't lift. I run.
You're
Because
tall.
I don't feel like
You seem
lifting. I don't
strong.
want to be strong.
I think you could do well.
yoga.
I probably could if
you'd
I really
kill it.
wanted to.
You would kill it, Maren.
Thank you.
You would kill it in the fields.
Thank you.
Back to the fields you go. Look, the strongest woman to have ever lived isn't even approaching like.
Well, that's with everything we have today, with the weightlifting and the whatever. And people spend their entire lives dedicated to getting stronger. In the olden days, what we're talking about right now, people did not care. They just wanted to work. And what I was saying is that even though women would be capable to work those jobs, society set them up to not work those jobs on purpose. That's all I'm saying.
Well, it's not just on purpose.
It is on purpose.
There's just a strength component to it that cannot be ignored.
But what I just said.
No, but you're saying, well, if these women, look, I think that there are women who, if they're really strong, I think they can do the job. My argument is, if you have 100 men and 100 women, and both of them, you put both of them through, you're saying
the same training,
the same training, and they're both like athletic.
Since birth, same food, same everything.
You do all of that, those 100 men are going to be stronger than all of those women.
Well, maybe the women would find out a way to do it without all the strength.
What?
Work smarter, not harder.
Work smarter, not harder.
How? Okay.
We make the men do it.
Yeah.
Here's the task.
Exactly.
Here's the
Make them
task.
do it.
I'm a dom.
Move this pile of rocks that each weigh 70 pounds from point A to point B.
Right.
Okay. Men, due to their physical strength, are going to be superior at
But
doing
women will
this.
come up with like a way to pull it.
And so do men. So did men.
I just don't think it's a
the
good
problem
user
with your
efficiency.
argument is there's no historical value to say that women would not do better because women were never given the chance. That's all I'm saying.
There is a precedence for it.
Women were
due
never
to-
given the chance to
It would-
try.
Hold on. Why?
But
You
why it
agree?
matters so
You
much?
agree it's a given that men are physically stronger.
Okay.
And do you think historically people also just knew men stronger than women?
Because they forced women to not try.
So
Yes, continue.
are you saying that physical strength is a social, like a social structure?
A little bit.
You're saying it's subjective, social, like physical strength. It's not
Muscular
objective.
men are attractive. Muscular women are ugly and manly. That's a whole thing. I've seen that everywhere. Women who weightlift, women who do boxing, they're not seen as attractive because they're muscular.
What does this have to do with, like, historic?
And I'm telling you right now, and that is today's world. In the olden days, a woman had muscle. That's like vile. That's like against the rights of women.
Against the what? Against the rights of women?
Women have.
What rights? Hold on. What are you talking about?
Women have
Because
a
women
way.
were supposed to be weak.
Look pretty.
Women
And look
are
pretty
weak.
and be tiny.
Wait, say it,
Maybe
go ahead,
you
say
are.
it.
Women are weak.
Maybe you are.
And also, I just don't understand, like, why do you have to make it a social thing?
I'm not weak
Because it's
either.
just not a good user efficiency. If you send women to plow the field, why don't you just take advantage of each other's talents? And maybe women are better at doing some other jobs, like maybe sewing.
Like what,
and then
giving
men
birth?
That's why there's
That's not a job. That's a
division
part of
labor.
life.
That's why
You know,
women
picking the
were
cherries,
behind
you
the
know.
sewing
Yeah,
machine
getting
back
pregnant.
in the old
Everyone
days.
has their own strengths. We're not
Yeah,
trying
exactly.
to diminish men. Men have their strengths, and we have our strengths. We're trying to come together as a society. We don't want to get away from men. We love men. We want men to just treat us equally,
Truly.
and like respect us, and not like
Because
it's not that hard to
the second men say we're stronger, we can do more, is the second they started having
But
all
is it-
political
Why are you guys
rights.
comparing yourself
But-
to
Your
us?
logic that they're stronger. Biologically,
Okay, and
they're
what about it?
stronger.
Is it
But what
descriptively?
if
It means that
Hold on.
And what about it?
They're
No, I
stronger
want to
doesn't
hear
mean
what
they
she wants to
disrespect
say
women.
about it.
Say it. Go ahead. Say it.
Men are biologically stronger.
No one said no.
So therefore, therefore they're going to be the ones doing the harder jobs that require more strength. I.e., why women couldn't do the coal mine, the construction, the whatever you say that they didn't get the opportunity to do. It's because they're weaker than men, and that's why they didn't get the opportunity. It's not because society made it this way.
Yeah, also I agree
Okay.
that men having more physical strength doesn't mean they're superior to women. And this is totally outside the topic because a man who is physically weak can still treat women like shit and can still disrespect them.
But do you realize that, especially in the olden days when strength actually mattered, and even recently, men say that being stronger and working in the olden days makes them better than women? Because I've seen that everywhere.
Nobody's arguing that.
what it sounds
Look,
like.
Can we agree on this? Descriptively, is it true that men are physically stronger than women?
They can be in some certain
It's not just
aspects.
that they can be. It's that they are.
I don't know. I know
You're
a
not
lot
going
of
to grant
weak
that.
No.
I agree with. Yes, there are weak men. I don't dispute that.
If every man and every woman on the entire planet did the exact same nutrition routine, the exact same workout routine, physically, yes,
Yep.
men could be stronger.
Would be
Would be stronger.
Okay,
However,
how
that's
do I
not the
prove this?
case.
So if they did studies and showed like they did this study with
But why
like
does that even
10,000
matter?
women, the grip strength, for example, men have orders of magnitude greater grip strength than
Okay.
women. So if we're looking at upper
grip
body
from something
strength, which is sort of predominated as it relates to physical labor typically, although there's some component of lower body strength, but men are also stronger in their lower bodies.
Okay.
Now, but would you agree that descriptively that's true?
Yeah. Does that mean they deserve more rights than women?
That's not what we're arguing. We're just saying that.
I never said they weren't stronger.
You seem
though.
to be making the case. You're arguing. Well,
I'm just saying
if the
that-
men and women started out in these jobs
I've
at the same
said
time,
since the beginning, if they started off the same jobs, same diet,
They
whatever,
wouldn't
men
be-
would be stronger. However, that's not the case because women have never been given the chance to do
but
any of that.
okay, sure,
They had
but
a head start.
if women were given the chance at the same starting point to start working in these jobs and through whatever it's swinging a pickaxe or digging with a shovel,
Okay.
I still would argue that even if you had a woman working the same amount of hours as a man, it's not even clear to me if they would have that sort of ability to even work the same length of time as a man in a physical capacity, they would not be able to develop the same level of strength as a man, even if they started at the exact same time.
Okay.
We have
And your
different
point is-
hormonal body, like our body.
You're
But
saying-
I'm wondering what the point
Whatever.
of the strength
It's just
argument
not
even
gonna get
is.
through.
I think the point of the strength is that it's nothing to do with the men being better than women. It's a scientifically proven.
Yeah, it's a fact.
Biology, and it's a fact. And because
I'm not saying it
they
isn't.
are stronger, they can do work that we cannot do. And if we do it, we could do it, but we're not going to do it as good as they do it because we don't have the strength that they have. And I would like to mention another thing, with your permission. Back then, it wasn't only that the women were not given the opportunity. I think we all agree that back then, as much as women were not allowed to vote and they were put down in other social, points, back then people were more supporting family. Who would raise those kids? Who would take care of the kids? Another thing, they will also support family and religion. And all that was so close together that the women were at home taking care of the kids, doing the housework, and going to church on Sundays. It was a completely different thing.
How depressed were those women?
It was different. But today, let me finish real quickly. Today, it's completely different. But you know what? I support family 100%, and that's what I was taught. And I am so grateful for that. And to see my parents together until their last day, and to see my mother taking care of me and my sister, I'm grateful to heaven today. And my mother was not discriminated. It was a different level of priorities.
But
That's what I think.
But in general, the difference of priorities. If a woman's priority is to be a homemaker and have a family, which is totally normal for women to want that, like I'd love that, it'd be great. If that's a woman's priority and the whole society, the whole country, the whole world believes that a woman's priority is to be the homemaker and the family maker, then that counts out the other women who don't want a husband, who don't have a husband, who are gay, who whatever. All of those people,
All right, look,
but all of those people who are taught that they have to be a family maker and a homemaker are suddenly left out of the job equation,
All right.
and that's unfair.
Okay, a couple questions here, and then I've got to move this on.
Alrighty, perfect.
Oh, yes.
If I could show you, for example, if we are looking at the apex of both men and women. So, for example, the U.S. women's soccer team got completely destroyed by like a under 18 boys team.
Okay.
Boys are innate having more.
No, but
sports,
what's the point of that
you know?
question?
Well,
They
the
just are
point
better.
is that if we look at sports, for example, if we look at sports, so if you look at elite female athletes, if they were men with their same scores, they would not be able to even qualify to compete in the Olympics, for example.
Okay.
So if you look at running, for example, men are faster than women. If you look at strength sports, men are stronger than women. There's this website that we've pulled up a whole bunch of times.
Have a man get a wax. Let's see how strong he is then.
No, can you finish your point?
Yeah, the point is essentially that if we look at sporting events, men in that dimension, and so you would have to agree that the elite female athletes, most female athletes who are elite, started at a very young age, so they have all the things that you mentioned, the good nutrition, all this other stuff. They've been involved in the sport since most Olympic athletes have been doing the sport since they were like children or whatever.
Okay.
But if you were to place the women and have them compete with the men would completely dominate. So the strongest women, the apex of women, you put them against the strongest men, the men outperform the women.
Okay,
Even if the women had that base level foundation of
are-
nutrition and like training.
That's why women and men compete separate, first of all. Second of all, men are taller. That is just part of life.
And they're also physically stronger.
Okay.
They have more muscle density.
Okay.
Okay.
But also, men and
are
women have different coaches.
Oh no, Marin, you're killing me here.
It's
Oh,
true.
the coaches.
The
We're
coaches are
softer and
different.
cuter and
Everything's different.
dainty.
And even if women get destroyed by the men's teams, does that make them less of people?
That's not the argument.
So what's the argument?
The argument is about you're saying okay. I'm saying men are stronger than women, and you're
Okay.
saying, well, hold on, women didn't have the opportunity, or there was like social stigma, or they didn't have the opportunity.
But it's-
and I'm saying you look at elite athletes who did have the opportunity, and you compare elite male athletes to elite female athletes. Both had opportunity. The women are not capable of competing with the men.
I'm not trying to say that it's not a biological fact that men can get stronger than women. I'm trying to say that the fact that is the reason that men are more like put on higher standards and have more rights than women because of strength is not
That's not the
truthful.
argument.
But that's
That's
my
not the
argument.
argument.
But that's my argument is that it shouldn't be that way. You're saying, yes, biologically, men are
Okay.
stronger than women. I'm saying, even if that's the case, it should not be a player in why women have less rights than men. Does that make sense?
Okay, so but descriptively though, I mean, it's kind of
Yes,
off
men
topic.
are stronger than women.
Yeah, but your point is a bit off topic, but I'll actually bite with you. So you would agree that do you believe in rights?
Yes.
Okay, what is a right?
What do you mean?
What you said? You were talking about rights. What are rights?
Just we have a set of rights.
But are
However,
rights-
human rights?
But are rights an invention of the mind? Are they an invention of society? Or are
Society.
there like inherent rights?
Invention of society.
Okay, so you agree that they're inventions of society?
Yeah.
Okay, so how do you enforce your rights?
What do you mean?
How do nations enforce their rights, or people
By
enforce?
creating laws.
Okay, and who enforces those laws?
Men.
Okay, and then you might even say like soldiers, for example. Let's say you're a country, and another country invades you, and then they're going to then impose their worldview and their
Right.
government whatever their laws on you, but maybe you disagree with their laws.
Right.
But you would argue, and I'm speaking descriptively here, I'm not saying what should be, I'm saying what is.
What is.
You would agree that like a country with a superior military force could invade another country and impose their laws on that country.
Yes, that happens all the time.
Happens all the time. And they do that through force,
Yeah.
right? So they do that, and who has a monopoly on force? Men. Okay, so when it comes to feminism, you're saying, like talking about women's rights, you would agree that women have to appeal to men to instill their rights?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I mean, then there's no argument then.
But it shouldn't be that way. That's my argument.
So how should it be?
Women should just be respected as human beings, but it's not the way it is, which is very sad.
But that's not descriptively. By the way, men can have their rights taken away too by other men.
Of course.
So, but it ultimately does come down to force. So feminists, in order for feminism to exist, you claim you're not a feminist, you claim you're a misandrist, but in order for women to have rights, men have to grant those rights.
Right now, yeah, that's the way it works.
Right. Okay. You were talking about why physical strength is a component here.
Okay.
All right.
I think you brought it full circle, and I at least understand what the point you're trying
No,
to
I
make.
understand he's trying to say that men have more physical force, and that's why women have to submit to them or whatever.
That's not
versus
I'm
power.
that's not look, I'm not making a should claim. I'm just speaking descriptively
Of what's happening.
I'm
and
saying
I agree that is what's happening.
Because men have a monopoly on force, that there is going to be a natural tendency to move towards a patriarchy.
But I also believe that it's not just men having more strength, it's that men rely on their strength more. Whereas if women were in charge since day one and women controlled everything, there'd be way less emphasis on force and strength to give rights and give laws. It would all be more methodical.
Let me ask you a question, though. If there's a dispute between two nations and they can't figure this out through diplomacy, what do you think is going to be the end result of this conflict?
Depends on the conflict, depends on the nation.
Drop some acid.
Girl.
Have them.
This girl.
You just give these little.
Well, let's say. Let's say. Let me ask you a question. Wait.
That would be
hold
the
on.
best way to actually have a genuine conversation.
But let me ask you a question. Let's say that there was a matriarchy, and this matriarchy was the most peaceful matriarchy that ever existed. However, there was another tribe, and this tribe was a patriarchy, and this tribe was belligerent, and they were interested in your territory. They wanted to conquer your territory. Wouldn't you have to have some sort of defensive force? Even if you were not like interested in going to war, you would have to maintain a military?
My question is, who's leading the person who's invading? Is it a man?
Yeah,
Probably.
sure. I'll say it's a man. Yeah.
So if it was a woman, I don't think they'd invade.
You don't think they would?
No, I don't.
That's interesting. So you just think women are less violent, or?
Yes.
Can I ask you a question related to this, bringing it back to dating and relationships, I
Yeah.
guess. How could this actually be the case if, for example, if we look at homosexual relationships? So,
Okay.
if you look at lesbian relationships, the incidence of violence in lesbian relationships is highest. So it goes like this: lesbian relationships, highest levels of domestic violence. You look at heterosexual relationships, they're in the middle, and then you look at gay homosexual homosexual relationships. The incidence of domestic violence is the lowest when you have two men. It's medium, well, in this scale. It's medium when there's a man and a woman, and the incidence of domestic violence is the highest when you have two women. How could it possibly be the case then, when you have two women who are conceivably more peaceable than men are? How could it then be the case that the incidence of violence is higher in lesbian relationships?
Well, first of all, I'd love to see that article. Second of all,
it's on
second
Wikipedia.
of all, I think women would be more likely to report it if it's with a woman rather than a man. They're scared of actual death when they're being abused by a man, and they're less likely to report it. And I think gay men, I've never seen this article. I've never seen these stats.
Right? They're still men.
Yeah.
And your position is that men are more violent than women.
Well, gay men aren't in positions of power.
Also,
so I've
what
never
do you
seen
think
that.
about the statistics?
Gay men are great.
What do you think about the fact that women are more likely to commit infanticide? So
Can you know what
that means?
infanticide, they're more likely to
they
kill
have-
their children.
Well,
Men do that too.
I
men are
agree,
more
yes,
likely to leave
men do that
than
too,
women.
but women are more likely to kill their children.
You mean abortion or post-birth?
I'm not, wait, I'm not even talking about abortion. I'm talking about a birth.
Post-birth,
yes,
killing their child.
Correct. Women are more likely to kill their children.
Well, men are more likely to leave. I don't know what your point is.
His point is that
We all have issues.
his
That's
point
it.
is that men is he's trying to say
We have
that
issues, okay.
that
Men
women
have
can be
issues,
very
we have those.
violent as well as
I gotta let some chats come through. We got Clane here. Sorry for the delay, Clane.
Clane donated $200. Chair 1, is that low-cut top designed to fight the patriarchy? Nothing like a bunch of 304s wearing revealing clothes and arguing against men.
Let's see your
You
face,
would all
bitch.
sell yourself for a day on a yacht.